Thank you for staying with us on the program. Let's put our first discussion this morning on the road. I'm joined by Honorable Ahmed Mahmoud, who is a member of the All Progressives Congress, as well as a public commentator. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
I want us to talk about not just politics or election, but let's talk about it from the standpoint of your party. We understand that a number of persons are ambitious as far as the gubernatorial election, which, by the way, is just a few months away in Edo State, is concerned. And some persons have pointed to internal wrangling within your party. How would you respond to that?
Well, we must understand that ambition is normal in human beings. And it's how the ambition is managed that is ultimately the issue in any society.
Right.
So it's normal to find contending forces. But so far, the so-called wrangling has been formative around the issues in Edo State for now.
What are those issues?
The issues are poor governance. This is what these candidates are trying to address. We've come to be disappointed, particularly the party, with the interventions of the governor in party affairs. For example, we still have outstanding a House of Assembly that is supposed to be performing oversight functions and is today absent. We're talking about, for example, the government coming out to say we've spent ₦1 billion in the fight against the COVID disease. Where is the oversight? How was this money budgeted? Who was it spent? How was it spent? Where are these resources? Where have they been deployed? Who is checking out to make sure that these resources have been adequately deployed to this fight that is now a global pandemic? So these are the issues around which there is contention. So what you see outside is a normal part of any democratic process. All the contending forces, all the ambitions are aligning and deciding the best way to express that ambition. As long as there's no violence, then I don't think there's any problem.
To just quickly react to the issue of those state governments spending $1 billion on relief materials and other efforts towards curbing the spread and the impacts of, or at least mitigating the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. His Excellency, the Deputy Governor of the state, was talking with EDO on Tuesday on her show, and one of the questions she asked him was also about the ₦1 billion issue and how it was spent. I remember clearly that the Deputy Governor had mentioned a number of things. He had talked about test kits and so on and so forth, several things. Are you saying we should get to the naira and kobo of the equation? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is what governance is fundamentally about. The naira and kobo, the allocation of scarce resources, the importance that is attached to that allocation, and ultimately who it is allocated to. We must know the nitty-gritty of every kobo that comes in and is spent. That is the essence of participatory and popular democracy. When you have the voices of 14 members of the State House of Assembly silenced, you are not doing participatory democracy. What you are doing is at best a dictatorship.
A lot of persons have said, going back to the issue of the House of Assembly and those other members who we are told have refused to come forward for inauguration, it's like trying to reinvent the wheel. But just before we push this conversation any further, let's quickly remind our viewers that Dr. Pedro Obaseki will be joining us via Skype this morning on the program, so he can also lend his voice to this discussion that we're having. By the way, Dr. Pedro Obaseki is a media mogul as well as a political analyst. Let's just talk more about all of these issues. We know INEC has not told us specifically whether or not election will hold in the state. We don't have a formal statement to that effect yet. But just before all of that happens, let's still talk about your party. Up until today, we keep hearing this faction and that faction. And we have never seen a situation where party with factions, in factions, did well in this country. So what makes yours different?
What is described as factions is fundamentally schools of thought, which is normal in any party practice.
But that's brought division, hasn't it?
Of course, it has brought, there's no system where there are contending forces where there isn't division. How that is managed, is what we are all focused on.
Okay.
The ultimate goal is to provide for the Edo people the best kind of service that the party will offer. We must always remember that Nigeria is party politics. The party is supreme.
Okay.
It is the ideals and programs of the party that candidates are supposed to fine-tune and push at every point in time. You saw that when the Supreme Court took Rotimi Amechi and said, if you are the candidate of the party, you are the party.
Right.
And that is what we need to understand. So the more the voices are, the less stifling the environment is, the better our democracy is. We are looking for robust participation that allows as many voices, because you have to, there's no voice that is wrong in a democracy as long as you don't overstep your bounds. And there's nothing that has been said or done that is wrong as far as I'm concerned right now in Edo APC politics. What we are trying to do is to distill the voices and bring out the finest and the best.
A lot of persons have said all of these rhetorics about the issues within your party are only, they are nothing but just a distraction to the governor, that the governor should be allowed to sit down and face the business for which he was elected, which is to to govern and, of course, provide leadership. And then you also have those who are saying everyone distracting the governor should let him be right now, including, for example, some persons have claimed the national chairman of your party. What are your sentiments?
In Borno State, the governor of Borno State is taking care of party politics, governance, and an insurgency.
But they don't have the same exact scenario as we do in Edo State.
The point of governance is the sum of governance. It's not the parts of governance.
Okay.
When you are in leadership, you don't select the issues that you have to contend with. You have to have a focus that allows you to distill the issues and bring as many people as possible together. That is the essence of governance. And so when you find that you are failing in that regard, then the party needs to come back and ask itself, can't we offer somebody better that can give us the sum of what we want? That is what we are looking for, essentially.
Okay, let's look at, now that you have many people whose ambition it is within your party still to become governor in the state. What exactly are the criteria, if you like, benchmarks your party uses in determining who emerges eventually? Of course, we understand there will be primaries, yes, ultimately, but what basically are the yardsticks for determining because you talked about the finest when you distill all of these thoughts. So how do we figure who the finest is?
To put it as simply as possible, the position of the governor is the sum of the ambition of all the party members, okay, expressed in one individual. Because the governor's ambition cannot be more important than my own ambition. To the point where I support his ambition to become the governor, he needs to turn around and look back at me and then support my own ambition. That is what party politics is about. Now, to your question, how do we define the best person? Unfortunately, there is no real criteria to know how a man handles power until he has been given power.
So it's more like a trial and error process, isn't it?
No, you get the sum from the history of the person. Okay. You look at how the person has performed in similar roles in the past, his interaction with people, how he handles issues. So you try to find and distill the best of those individuals. And then you now promote that person, push him, and then see if he's able to push the party policies to the best of his own abilities. That's what we're looking at.
There are those who are saying, hey, hold on a minute. If your party had effective, forward-looking, selfless, exemplary leadership style, we won't be where we are today, which also means by extension, we won't be having this nature of conversation. Do you share in that thought?
No, I don't. Every leadership is for the time it comes. Okay. That's my belief.
But your leadership could have been better, I'm sure.
That is also subjective. We believe that the leadership we have is for this time. So we need to move forward, moving forward. That's how politics works. At every point in time, you need to sit down, assess your situation, see if you can do better, and indeed attempt to do better. That is how politics evolves. That's how societies grow. And that's how Edo State is going to grow.
What we're looking forward to having Dr. Pedro Obaseki calling live via Skype on the program this morning from Lagos, just to make that clear to everyone watching this morning. Remember too that you can send in your contributions via our Twitter handle at ITV Radio NG. so you can lend your voice to this discussion about Edo State's election, the gubernatorial election in Edo State. A lot of issues have led up to where we are today, and going forward, a lot of persons have said, look, this whole thing just circles around who becomes the governor. End of story. Let us look at something else. There have been claims by the state governor too, that one of the reasons you have forces within the party fighting him, or whatever it stands for, which he believes is in the overall interest of Edo people, is because he has refused vehemently and unapologetically to, as it were, share public funds with some individuals, powerful individuals within the party. I already can guess what your response would be. Isn't that the reality across this country beyond Edo States, for example?
I don't know what the forces that the governor is contending with, but he has been challenged several times on several fora to name those individuals that have asked him to come and share state resources with him. And he has, so far he hasn't. So we must assume that that is either propaganda, narrative, nobody knows. But what we are saying is, if there exist such people, he should come out and tell the Edo people who these people are that are pulling him back, so that all of us can face them and tell him, leave him alone to do his job. But in the absence of that, we have to look at what we can see. What we can see is that currently in Edo State, there is no oversight function. Democracy is suffering in Edo State. We cannot have, it is unacceptable that there is no oversight to executive power. There are three branches of government that our constitution lays down for state governance. There's the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. We are lacking in the legislative. There is so much that needs to be done. This is a critical time. We need to have voices that will come out and tell us exactly where the resources of governance are going. Who is oversight? What are they doing? Where are these resources being deployed? Who is benefiting from them? This is a critical point in the life of Edo State, and this situation is entirely unacceptable. Okay,
we're going to talk about the situation in particular a little more, but we would love to remind you we're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and our website. That's ITV Radio Nigeria.com/live. Our Twitter handle is active as well at ITV Radio NG, and you can also tweet directly at me at Sage Dazzle. That is at SAGEDAZZLE. Remember to that you can like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's talk about money politics. Fundamentally, even before all of these issues emerged, most politicians will agree, of course, many Nigerians will agree as well, that elections are to, in fact, the whole democratic process, especially looking at the peculiar manner in which we practice it, or as some people say, experiment with it in this country, is capital intensive. So it's always about money, isn't it? Can we take away the money thing, or at least can we cut down on the money thing a little?
Well, my view is that if you look at the practice of popular democracy in Nigeria between 1999 and now, there has definitely been an evolution. It is evolving more and more towards the voter, rather than who can fund the elections. If you look at our last elections, for example, if you add the voters card and the fact that voters have to be physically present for elections to actually take place and count, you will see that we've come full circle from money politics to people. This is not to say that there is no voter inducement, but we are trying our best to minimize that as much as possible. When you add the fact that also INEC says wherever there is any kind of violence or any kind of contest, a physical contest, the result in that polling unit will be excluded. It also brings a certain level of calmness to our politics. So let us address the issue of money politics. There is no ambition that is driven without some kind of financial consideration.
But some people say ours goes over the board, doesn't it?
I'm not sure where we are comparing it with to say it goes over the board, but you have to spend money in politics. That is an established fact. We have, for example, in Edo State, there are 3 senatorial zones, and we have 192 wards, 18 local governments. You need to have some kind of financial muscle to send your message. Let's assume all you are sending is your message across. You have to spend money to get it across. You have to mobilize people who will look after your interest. share your message in all the nooks and crannies of the state. So yes, there is a lot of money involved. We have to keep on looking at how best to reduce the fact that elections can be bought,
right.
Candidates can be influenced by financial considerations, and these are all topics that will keep on evolving as our participatory democracy evolves in the practice.
Let's talk about ideology, for example. Would you say political parties, especially looking at yours, have an ideology? Because a lot of persons argue that politicians themselves, individually, hardly have conviction as to being nationalistic, being patriotic, for example. So they say, if you remove the element of patriotism, there's already a fundamental issue. There's already a gap somewhere. And then you bring these individuals together as a bunch, so to speak, to form a party, run a party, throw up candidates, and do all sorts in the name of democratic experiment or democratic practice. Is a problem, because they say the ideology factor is taken away. What is exactly the ideology of the APC?
The ideology of APC is better life for most of Nigerians.
Are we achieving that?
Yes, we are, gradually. We've not come to the perfect point. We've probably not even hit 50%. But it's a constant practice, it's a constant evolution. You have to understand that the sum of the progress any society makes is dependent on the ambitions and how the ambitions of the individuals in that society is driven. There is nothing like a free lunch, for example. Somebody has to pay for it.
Right.
Now we have to decide how the allocation of our resources will target as many people as possible to get that free lunch. That is what political parties ultimately drive at. The APC has shown consistently leadership not only at state but at national level.
Okay.
And the evolution of our politics has clearly shown that the more people aspire and raise the bar, the better for everybody else. Edo State is definitely not the same as it was in 1999. Today, it has moved. There is infrastructure. The socioeconomic outlook of the state has improved. All these are things that you can point at and say, this is what the APC government has done. There is nobody that is perfect, but we keep on working our best to make sure as many people are captured.
I love us to keep this conversation at home, which is, I love us to stay with the issues as they affected those states in particular. But again, let's be reminded, we're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, itvradioNigeria.com/live. You can also tweet at us using @ITVRadioNG. Just include the hashtag TMI Thursday. The pandemic is in front of us. We understand in the final analysis we will beat it. But while we are at it, elections are not going to be same, at least for the foreseeable future, particularly when you're looking at the one coming up in Edo State in no distant time. How would you say, to what extent would you say it's challenging having to, as it were, conduct elections or even campaign, for example, in the face of a pandemic, because you can't have conventional rallies now, obviously. So how are we dealing with those peculiarities?
I have to be honest with you, this is a massive challenge that we are facing. The logistics of campaigns without any form of gathering has never been tried before. So the party and the candidates, of course, are evolving strategies whereby they can reach as many people as possible while keeping within the protocols that COVID-19 has imposed on the whole society. Okay. INEC hasn't come out to categorically tell us the mode of the elections that are coming up. But they've come out to say that for now, nothing has changed as far as the timetable is concerned. Right. So what we are working on is the primaries are still going to hold as per scheduled, and the elections are going to hold subsequently. The mode of the elections and the primaries, nobody is exactly clear about. But I'm confident that INEC is going to come out with modalities that allows us to maintain social distancing, keep safe, and still cast our vote. Because it's important that the people of Edo State express their mandates. Right. They need to come out and tell the current government to give an account of itself for the past 4 years. And if they are not satisfied with what they hear, they need to decide who the best person is to move forward.
Okay, let's talk about campaign, which I already mentioned in passing. We're at a point where most times when people see politicians on television, whether from, I mean, any of the factions within your party, as it were, or any of the blocks within your party, the assumption is, okay, this is some sort of stealth mode campaign. They are leveraging the pandemic to campaign, to reach out using distribution of palliatives as a cover, or if you like, as a front. There's some truth in that, isn't it?
There is no truth in that, to the extent that if all the politicians decide that they want to use that same cover to campaign, there will be less hunger in Edo State. If all the
do they all have the resources to answer the question of hunger in Edo State?
But we cannot pick and choose what is suitable for us. If you are saying that they are campaigning, but they are distributing palliatives, and it is helping people, that cannot be a bad thing. Okay. As long as we are helping people, then we are doing something.
What about the factor of motive? People are also concerned about that. Yes, it's a good thing you're giving us food, you're giving us essentials, but we're also concerned about the rationale behind it. Isn't that worth noting?
But there's no human activity that is entirely altruistic. Every human activity has some sort of motive behind it. Okay. When you are dressing up your children to go to school in their best clothes, it's so that they will say this children's father is taking care of the children. That you may not come out and say is a motive, but it's a motive nonetheless.
Obviously.
So what we are saying is the pandemic has imposed certain restrictions on expression of interest. Okay. And how the politicians navigate those waters. There is no template. There is no template. Nobody has ever experienced this before. True. So we are trying our best to stay within what the safety protocols demand and how we can express ourselves at the same time. So these are things that, well, we need to keep on fine-tuning. It's okay for people to insinuate that there's a motive. But my counter question is, if the motive allows for the improvement of society, then it's not an entirely bad motive.
Let's talk about efforts that have been made to, as it were, reconcile warring factions, or again, blocks within your party. How are those efforts coming?
In my personal opinion, what we have is a government that has refused to imbibe the ethos of participation.
Why is it always about the government? It seems your block or in the party is always doing the right thing. Then it's always about the government. Why do we have that situation from your own standpoint?
If the party is telling you to do things and you are refusing, and you hold the party ticket, one person is right, one person is wrong. If the party is supreme in Nigerian democracy,
is the party really supreme in practice?
In practice, the party is supposed to be supreme. Every candidate is supposed to be pushing the policies of the party. That is what Nigerian democracy is about. Today, we don't have independent candidates. So when the party is telling you, you need to inaugurate the members of your House of Assembly, you need to bring in as many people as possible, you need to bring the voices into cohesion so that we can all speak together, and you are refusing, then there's a problem. Where you like it or not, the government is the major block in any society, and it's the government that determines how a society is run. If the government is refusing to follow the tenets of the constitution, then of course you have chaos everywhere. So all these factions that you are talking about are telling you we need to come back to what the party says. I'm not sure that they are the ones that are in the wrong.
In the last couple of years, we've particularly heard that at the state level, the governor is the leader of the party. At the federal level, the president is the leader of the party. Whatever the party may be, APC, PDP, APGA, whatever the name of the party. Is that in principle or in practice?
It's both in principle and in practice. But it is superseded when you have somebody, for example, who is the national chairman of the party, coming from the same region or state as the governor. Because whether you like it or not, there is a hierarchy, there is a pecking order. In every society, there is a pecking order. Right. You cannot, for example, compare a local government chairman with the state governor. If you are at a function and the local government chairman is there, he must give way to the governor, and so on and so forth, the national chairman and the president. So there is a national pecking order, there is a hierarchy. And if you follow that strictly, in the practice and in theory and practice, there shouldn't be any kind of crisis.
Since 1999, we've experimented, as it were, uninterrupted democracy.
Yes.
In this country. There are people who believe your party is a disruptor for the wrong reasons, whatever they mean. I may not be able to put a finger on, but what they're saying is your party is derailing the fundamental values of democracy in this country. If you were to look at such persons in the eye, what would you be telling them?
Well, I would want them to be more specific so that I'll be able to address the issues. That is too much of a general statement for me to be able to address. But I would want to be more optimistic and look holistically. The party APC has been in government at the center now for 4 years. If we look at the challenges that were inherited before that time, prior to that time, you will realize that Nigeria has come a long way in the practice that APC has instilled in the center. If we leave the center and even come to the state, the same thing is possible here. Look at the development that APC has brought to Edo State. Look at the infrastructure. Look at the human capital that we've infused. Look at the practice of democracy. There is nobody that is going to look at APC and say...
But with all of these beautiful things you're saying, why is it still difficult, or should I say impossible, to give the sitting governor, Governor Obaseki, some credit for all of this work? We know, yes, his predecessor, Comrade Adams Oshomole, had done a whole lot of work, and the governor apparently is stretching the effort from that point on. Doesn't he deserve some credit, regardless of the bad blood or something that may exist?
The governor definitely deserves credit, because it's not easy to be a governor.
Obviously.
It is a difficult, time-consuming job, and it's also most times very thankless. The governor has done a lot. Nobody is saying the governor has not worked. Nobody is saying that he's entirely to be castigated. But we are saying that as far as the party policy is concerned, Governor Obaseki needs to do more to be inclusive. Governance is not about one person. Governance is the sum of the people whose ambition you represent. And the governor is not doing enough to represent the ambitions and the aspirations of his party and his party men. This is why there is conflict.
Okay, we're going to take a break now, and the next few minutes we'll spend to talk about how we can possibly resolve these conflicts that Ahmed just made reference to. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on the program. Obaseki, he's calling in on the program from Lagos to help us create perspective for some of these issues we have raised. Dr. Pe Sorry, I've been talking with a gentleman in the studio, a member of the APC, Ahmed Babodu. We'll be looking at issues regarding electioneering in the face of a pandemic on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we've also been talking about the crisis rocking the APC, particularly in Edo State. Let's begin with first, the fact that INEC has not stated officially its position as to whether or not elections will hold in this state, considering the fact that we have this COVID-19 crisis to deal with. What have been your thoughts?
Well, it is funny that many of us don't understand the Constitution. The major thing is, unless the country is at war, which to a large extent you pandemic, that is the only time elections may not hold. Okay. But as it is, the nation is not technically at war right now. The nation is facing a global pandemic. Yes, that is correct. But only the INEC can determine whether the environment is safe enough for the elections in Edo State to hold. However, one thing that should be primary or paramount at this time is whether the primaries, which is tangential to holding an election, will hold. In terms of that, there is nothing that stops the primaries from holding if you take into consideration, number one, the instructions of the NCDC, the National Center for Disease Control, and then you take the INEC guidelines, number two, and then number three, you take the APC constitution. If you take an aggregate of all these three, there is nothing that stops the holding of election or primaries in Edo State as it regards the APC. Now, these three things I mentioned, the NCDC says there must be social distancing. Right. There must not be more than 20 persons, maximum 50, gathered in one particular spot at the same time, within a proximate of 100 meters. So if that is on the one hand. On the second hand, no elections can hold in Edo or any part of Nigeria without the primaries. On the third hand, the APC specifies strictly that there will be primaries via indirect primaries, which has been the prevalent mode of doing primaries in Edo State and all over Nigeria and over the APC. That was the primaries that brought in Mr. Buhari. That was the primaries that brought in Mr. Adams Oshiomhole for his second term when he ran under the APC. That was the primaries that also brought in Mr. Godwin Obaseki. The second one, which has only been done a couple of times, and we understand the political exigencies that led to that, is the direct primaries, where everybody across the nook and crannies of the state will vote. At that point, that is where the problem is. That is almost like a normal general election. And it's following the NCDC guidelines, that cannot happen. It is only the indirect primaries that can be controlled in a controlled environment. There are only 18 local government areas in Edo State. There are only 192 units in the wards, voting wards in Edo State. So if you put all of them at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium, you can actually arrange all the booths in that large, vast expanse, and all of them will have nothing more than 50 meters away from each other, and then you can allow them to trickle in and vote. In the elections that brought in Mr. Godwin Obaseki, only 13 officers from the ward were legally allowed to vote. They call them principal officers. But the total number of elected officers at the ward level is 26 or 27 max. So if you look at it, all the 192 wards can also vote easy in Ogbemudia Stadium, only in an indirect primary. The only thing is, if the pandemic continues after June, because the terminal date that was given by INEC was June 27th, and INEC cannot hold an election into Edo State a minute after the 13th of October. So, which means these are time bound. We cannot change the constitution as it is. Okay. So, the only way that the primaries can go on as scheduled, or if the pandemic goes into July, the only way it can be heard, because it must be heard, there must be a new government, whether it is a return of Mr. Godwin Obaseki or not, on the 12th of November. And no election can be held a month before then. So by the 13th, 30 days to that day, there must have been an election.
Okay, let's talk about the election, particularly from the fact that we have several, or at least a handful of dissenting voices within the APC. That is a factor that will sure play out at one point or another as far as the election is concerned, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think there is anything wrong with dissenting voices. People, when they gather, even among the 12 disciples, there must be a Judas. Amongst all the 12 tribes of Israel, there must be a breakaway. People are people because they are able to make dissenting choices. So I don't have a problem with opposition either within or outside. The only problem is, it is the conduct of those who are opposing that should be called into question. By the time you begin to find a situation where persons who want to rule us, who want to follow, when you rule, you follow the rules. When the persons who are aspiring to rule us are the ones who literally have a baggage of litany of breaking the rules, you know, it becomes a huge problem. Not a problem only to the polity, it's also a problem to the very nature of what they want to do. Why should I trust you when all you do, the whole internet, the whole news is filled with litany of you breaking rules? That one makes me uncomfortable. So if there are dissenting voices, APC is one family, whether they even like it or not, you know, and that alone shows that there is a willingness of persons to participate in the process. I don't have any problem with that. But they must conduct themselves within the ambit of the law. And you cannot want to rule me when all you do is break the rules. So that is my only problem. I don't think anybody has a right.
Just before we let you go and pursue other things today, let's talk about one more thing within 1 minute. There's a pandemic apparently, and electioneering is right in front of us. These are not the same circumstances as we had during previous elections. How do we mitigate this and still come out without smelling of smoke, as it were?
Yeah, I think everybody should just take into consideration one thing, that the EDO people, the oneness of the entire people, must be at the forefront. The only way we can do this and do this well is for all of us to play by the rules. Number two, please, I don't support anyone who seems to support all those agberos and talks and stuff. The moment that comes into play, Pedro, I will come out smoking in opposition. The only way I think we can do this election is to remember that only Edo people matter. The Edo people matter more than all the individuals involved, and they have to play by the rules. Then we must read what is in the Constitution, both for the party and of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay.
I heard the rumor, I don't want to just, maybe I will say this in passing.
Okay.
I just heard the rumor that the persons have decided to choose one candidate or one aspirant. That is not a problem. But the rule says that for you to contest within the APC, you must have been a card-carrying member of the party a minimum of 1 year, 12 calendar months prior to the holding of that primary election.
Right.
So those are the rules, and the rules are the rules, and the rules cannot be bent for one person.
Dr. Pedro Obaseki, I want to say thank you so much for spending a part of your money with us on the program.
Oh, thank you so much.
You enjoy the rest of your day. Incidentally, we couldn't bring Dr. Pedro Obaseki via Skype. Good thing is he's been able to lend his voice to all of this. Just to give you 1 minute to wrap it up, as far as this discussion is concerned, what I would like you to note, at some point there'll be election, and INEC will call the shots. What must we do right now to ensure this turns out the best we can?
Well, like Dr. Obaseki said, we must always put the interest of the Edo people at the forefront of all the agitations for either the governance or the improvement of the society. At this point in time, it is important that the government, INEC, and everybody that is going to be involved in this electionary process keeps on harping on the challenges that we are facing, and the fact that whatever modalities are going to come out of this will be novel and will be something that everybody has to take into account, that we are under a pandemic, the conditions are different, and we need to be aware of social distancing and the protocols, and etc., etc. So the earlier that these kind of mobilization, so to speak, is carried out, the better for everybody.
Okay, thank you so much. I've been talking with Ahmed Mahmoudou, a member of the APC and a public commentator, and we've been looking at those states' election and many of the elements that will shape that very significant event. So we appreciate you coming to talk to us this morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
On the program. We'll take a quick break now. We're back shortly to wrap it up. Stay with us.